بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. To my live audience who's sitting in front of me and those who are watching at home. So before we start today's session, there was one of my close friends, a family friend, also my father's close friend, so it gives me double connection because if it's your father's friend, there's also a right of respecting that individual. He's from Phoenix, Arizona, Dr. Wasik. I love this man. He's an amazing person. And his family, I visited his house many times. He's hosted us. His wife is always generous to us and taking care of us when we go to his house. I heard the heartbreaking news this afternoon that his mother in Pakistan contracted COVID-19 and she passed away. And really, I didn't know what to say to him. All I said to him was that this is a very tough time to go through. I mean, it's hard to give someone comfort whose mother passed away. It's not people that have gone through it. Allah make us among those who take care of our parents when they're alive, So let's make dua for his mother that Allah gives her Jannatul Firdaus and makes her grave a garden of paradise. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. اللهم اغفر لحينا وميتنا وشاهدنا وغائبنا وصغيرنا وكبيرنا وذكرنا وأنثانا اللهم من أحييت منا فأحيي الإسلام ومن توفيت منا فتوفى الإيمان. Oh Allah, forgive the mother of Dr. Wasik Sahab. Oh Allah, give her Jannatul Firdaus without any hisab. Make her qabr, a garden of paradise. Make us a means of continuous charity for her after she has left us, and give her family, the ones who she has left behind, sabr al-jameel. Oh Allah, make her stand in front on the day of judgment under your arsh, and make her among those who get the book of deeds in her right hand. Oh Allah, and grant her Jannatul Firdaus without any accountability. And oh Allah, make her walk behind the leader of the women of Jannah, Fatima anha, and with the speed of lightning over the Sirat. Oh Allah, make us among a means of continuous charity for her and her family, and give Dr. Wasik, especially him and his family, sabr al-jameel. Oh Allah, forgive all of our sins, and anyone who has passed away or is sick, oh Allah, give him shifa kamil ajla. Anyone who has passed away, oh Allah, you give him maghfirah and you make their qabr a garden of paradise. Wa sallallahu ala khayri khalqi Muhammadin wa ala alihi. Today's session is going to be quite different from the ones we did before. This scene is not taking place in the blessed cities, because parents, one thing that can creep into our minds is, it happens all the time, is that maybe if we're not in a blessed city, right, in a very good community with all the resources, then this is the reason why our kids are not turning out to be righteous or the way we want them to be. So we sometimes make the geographic location an excuse that because of this happened, right? And it's true that it does play a big part. Environment does play a big part. And the last few weeks we've spoken about individuals who were raised in very blessed environments. So for example, we spoke about Imam Shafi'i, his mother moved him from Gaza to Mecca and lived most of his life in Mecca and Medina, right? Then you had Imam Malik rahimahullah, who was raised where? In Medina. So you're like, okay, well, that means we should go to Medina and move there and just, maybe that's gonna do the trick. And then we had Umar bin Abdul Aziz rahimahullah, who was from Cairo, like his father was the governor of Qahira of Egypt, but his father moved him to Medina to be raised in Medina. Does that make sense? And today, the individual we're going to be talking about is somebody who was not fortunate enough to be raised in these environments, but still rose above his surroundings and became the reason why his city was put on the map until the day of Qiyamah. And his city is known by his name, even though that's not his name. But his city now, every time you say the city's name or that area's name, the first person you think of is that individual. How did this happen? So the individual that we're talking about today is Muhammad bin Ismail bin Ibrahim bin al-Mughira al-Bukhari rahimahullah, right? Now you look at this person, he's born in Khurasan. Khurasan it's commonly spoken about as Persia. We say Persia, but really it's not just Persia. It's most of the northern Iran, Uzbekistan, some portions of Afghanistan, and other regions. It makes up the region of Khurasan. Khurasan is known as an area of fire worshippers. These were people that used to worship fire, and these are not individuals that were righteous. These were not individuals that were from Mecca who had some fitrat of Ibrahim in their lives. These were just completely on the other side of the spectrum, right? And there's no historic evidence that the Prophet ﷺ's message while he was alive was was spread among the general public of Khurasan. We say that around the 90th Hijri of after the Prophet ﷺ passed away, we historically are shown that Islam starts spreading in Khurasan through the traders that came there. So we have Khurasan, a place that's not a good environment to raise your children. Not just that as far as religiously, because they're fire worshippers. They're not like the Christians, the Ahli Kitab. These are fire worshippers. The second thing is the city that he was born in, known as Bukhara, was this city itself is a very old classic city. It's more than 5,000 years old, and it had many names throughout the history. It was also known as Madinatul Tujjar, the city of commerce, the city of trade, because it fell upon the Silk Road, the ancient trading route. So this place was very affluent, as far as resources are concerned. So there was money there, wealth there. People were all about business. So think about certain areas in the world where everyone's about one thing. So for example, the Bay Area, there's the tech people, even Seattle. Then you have the Motor City where we live. It's all about, Motor City. It's all about manufacturing. Imagine a city that's all about business, right? And religiously, they're all about fire worshipping. So, a child is born in this environment. And we know that so you have Muhammad bin Ismail bin Ibrahim bin Mughira bin Bardizbah, right? So this name that his great-great-grandfather is a Persian name. So you know that somewhere in the lineage, whether it was Bardizbah or Al-Mughira were the first ones who accepted Islam. So how did this child, Muhammad bin Ismail al-Bukhari, how did this child in that region, without moving early on in his life to another region where there were scholars, where there was it was not Baghdad, where there was a plethora of scholars you can go to, you just go to any masjid, there's an environment there. This was not Egypt, this was not Medina, this was not Mecca, this was thousands of miles away from that area. How did this child come to this point where today Imam Bukhari is probably the most well-known scholar of Islam? Arguably the most well-known scholar of Islam. Everyone all over the world is saying his name and saying Rahimahullah, right? So how did that happen? And the first thing I have to say, Abuhuma salih. Abuhu, like how the Quran says, وَكَانَ أَبُوهُمَا صَالِحًا, his parents were righteous. That's where it starts with. Even though Imam Bukhari never has any recollection of his father, because historians say either his father passed away before he was born or early on in his life his father passed away. But his father, that's why it's very important to know that as parents, our actions, our emotions, our decisions will reflect in our children's lives. Even though they may not have any encounter with us. So we have Imam Bukhari, who really never seen his father, but the father's actions and decisions are affecting and impacting his child's life way after he has left this world. So that is very important to understand that. Don't take this as this is a responsibility that as parents Allah has given us. We have to be more careful about this. So you have this, I'll talk about the father. Now the father, I'm not going to go into details about Imam Bukhari's life because this is not what I do in this session. We talk about how the upbringing of the pious. We don't go into the life and the accomplishments and achievements of the individual. For that there are many other lectures online, books that you can read, but this is specifically highlighting certain decisions or certain methods that the parents took to raise such a child. So when I look into the father's life, there's two things that stick out to me. And these are two things that we can take back home with. Two things that stick out to me. Number one, this father, he would spend a lot of time with scholars. A lot of time with scholars. Imam Bukhari himself says, my father spent time with Imam Malik, the one that we spoke about 2 weeks ago. He spent time with Hamad bin Zayd rahimahullah, a great scholar. And he said, Imam Bukhari literally, he says, وَصَافَحَ إِبْنَ الْمُبَارَكِ بِكِلْتَا يَدَيْهِ, that my father literally shook the hands of Abdullah bin Mubarak with both of his hands. Meaning that he was so enthusiastic in meeting scholars and being around them, just sitting with them, right? This enthusiasm to be around scholars, respecting them, hosting them, this reflects really nicely in your children's lives. I know that I've seen my parents, for example, my father, or many people, many of my colleagues who are not scholars, we've seen that Many of my colleagues who are scholars whose parents are not scholars, I've seen that something that's very common among their parents is they had this deep love for scholars, deep love for people who memorize the Quran, because they never did it, but they just had this love and attachment. And anytime a scholar would come to the city, they would want to host. Could you please come to my house? Don't think of these things as something light. Do it. This could reflect in your children's life. And disrespecting scholars, and not having any value for them. Now what's going to happen is we're going to end up going to them in times of need. And now that's not the best way to approach scholars. Only when we need our children is, the persons whose doors we knock when our child leaves our house or something happens, we knock on the scholars' doors, right? So the first thing that I say, quickly just say it, is spending time with scholars. We have to take out time from our lives to spend time and respect them and be around them so that our children can be impacted by those gatherings, even though Imam Bukhari's father was not actively participating in Imam Bukhari's upbringing, but that still affected him throughout his life, right? So that's the first thing. The second thing that I want to highlight about Imam Bukhari's father was something called wara'. Do you know what wara' means? Wara'. All right, so wara' is a very difficult word to translate it in one word in English, okay? Basically, it means تدل على الكف والانقباض. Wara' means someone who just stops in his or her track. Like you're about to do something, but you just have a moment of pause and moment of reflection. That's what wara' literally means. You just stop yourself. You don't just jump into something without thinking. That's what the literal meaning of wara' is. But if you look at some other the ma'ani of wara'. There are so many people who have mentioned a lot of different ma'ani. What are the subtle meanings of this word? Basically, I'll say a few because they're very important. Raghib Asfahani, he says, Al-wara' عبارة عن ترك التسرع إلى تناول أعراض الدنيا. That wara' is an explanation or a meaning of not being hasty, not being quick to just get some instant gratification, instant benefit of dunya, even by sacrificing something of your deen or sacrificing something of the pleasure of Allah. Just stopping yourself. Okay, even though you may be able to make this profit, but if there's a chance of this profit being haram, stopping yourself. Okay? Some other scholars say, اجتناب الشبهات خوفا من الوقوع في المحرمات. And this is what I'm going to talk about today. That preventing yourself from getting involved in doubtful things because you fear that if you stay involved or you're associated with doubtful things, you may end up doing the haram things, the things that Allah has prohibited, because the line of doubtful things and haram things it's like a border, like Canada and USA, like the border, the lake. You can't really see it, but they're the border. So being careful, because they're mixed, they're right there. Comes in a lengthy hadith of the Prophet ﷺ about the person who saves himself from the doubtful things has saved his life and his deen. So this is what wara' actually means. And there's a lot of context about wara' in hadith and how the Prophet ﷺ would speak about this and how the Sahaba, how they were very careful when it came to these things, right? That they were, Dhahak bin Uthman, he says, أَدْرَكْتُ النَّاسِ وَهُمْ يَتَعَلَّمُونَ الْوَرَعَ. Today we don't even talk about it. That I met people, all they were learning is what wara' is, how to become a person of wara'. How to become a person of being careful about not getting involved with those things that are doubtful. It may be halal, but it may be doubtful, right? And I'm going to speak about that in a few seconds. وَهُمْ الْيَوْمِ يَتَعَلَّمُونَ الْكَلَامِ. But today they're just busy learning rhetoric, learning more sciences, just getting more educated about different things, but not understanding what actually wara' is, right? So that's basically the second quality that I find in the life of Imam Bukhari rahimahullah's father. And why do I say that? On his deathbed, Ahmad bin Hafs rahimahullah, he says, I entered upon دخلت على إسماعيل والد أبي عبد الله عند موته. I entered upon the father of Imam Bukhari on his deathbed when he was about to pass away. I said to him, how will you present yourself in front of Allah on the Day of Judgment? Well, this is again, I mention this all the time, this is something we should reflect over. If Allah asks me, what did you do for me? Think about it. It really makes a big difference, because then you'll start making those deeds better. Like, okay, if Allah asks me, because you start when you're building your resume to get into a med school or grad school, you're highlighting those milestones. 40, and then making sure that the person you did the community service hours for, he writes a letter for you, and you're highlighting those, and you put them together. And what is going to be your resume that you're going to present in front of Allah? This is a beautiful thing to do. Not that all those things are going to be accepted by Allah, but just that thought of it can help us get better, right? So this is something that was common among the pious predecessors. Okay, what are you going to say to Allah when you meet him on the Day of Judgment? And he said, I'm going to say to Allah on the Day of Judgment, لا أعلم من مالي درهما من حرام ولا درهما من شبهة. Oh Allah, I've never earned one penny from a haram source, nor have I ever earned one penny from a doubtful source in my life. My entire money, my entire wealth is 100% halal. 100%. Everything I've eaten in my life, I've always stayed away from the doubtful. And I've only eaten halal. Earning, always halal. This is not something easy to do when you're living in a city of commerce. Because basically everyone's doing business, right? You need money, you need to invest. You know what's interesting about this? Listen to this. Imam Bukhari in his entire life, he never worked. He lived until in his 60s, and he lived off of the wealth that his father left as inheritance for him. Isn't that interesting? So much barakah in that halal rizq that he lived. Today, we try to cheat Allah by doing things that are doubtful to attain more money for our children. Don't fool yourself. Right? That has no barakah. You're not fooling Allah, you're fooling yourself. The effect of barakah is in that wealth, even if it's less. That is not attained by missing salah. That is not attained by breaking the commandments of Allah. That is not attained through doubtful means. Rather, it is 100% halal accurate. That is not attained through fatwa shopping. Okay? That is not attained just because there's a halal sign on the restaurant. Right? Yes, we spoke about this before. This is something today, and I'm going to say this about wara again. A very, very basic example. Parents, we must, and for our children as well, because this is youth as well, but when parents act upon azima means like what Allah wants, like the highest degree of worship. Like what does Allah want for you right now? So for example, I'll give an example of dhuhr and asr salah, for example. Right when dhuhr time comes in, it is azima to pray right away. It is better to pray right away because the Prophet said, the best of deeds, the favorite deed to me is to pray salah ala awwali waqtiha, right when time comes in. And there is leeway, rukhsa means leeway, flexibility, that you can pray all the way till asr time comes in, right? So if parents are habitual and children are seeing this, remember we're talking about Imam Bukhari's father, he didn't even see, but he affected his life. Imagine us, our children are seeing us being very flexible with the timing of salah. So dhuhr came in, but we're praying it 2 hours later. We're praying it. So, facts show us that parents who are always, treading the line of rukhsa, flexibility. This masala has flexibility. Watching movies has flexibility. Listening to this song, there's a flexibility. I think one scholar said it's fine. Listen, then what's going to happen? Our children will go towards the haram. This is going to be they're going to take it one step forward. But if we are staying on the lines of azima, like right when salah comes, the most authentic, the opinion that's the closest to Quran and Hadith, and listen to your heart about these things. This is not something that we can be open-minded about, really, because this can impact our children's lives. This is something I'm seeing. I'm not saying this. This is my tip to you. I'm saying this is what I see from Imam Bukhari's father, and that affected him. And I wish I could speak more about him, but we can't. But we do know this is an interesting discussion about wara, being careful and not just always being flexible in front of our children, because then they'll take it one step forward. The mother, we don't know her name, but the mother did a few things that were very important in her child's life, Imam Bukhari's life. The first thing she did, Imam Bukhari was born on a Friday, the 13th of Shawwal. So this is 13th of Shawwal was just a few weeks ago, right? 194 years after Hijrah, 194. So he was part of the third generation. So he was part of that generation. His mother named her son Muhammad, not because Muhammad was just a name that was very common at the time, but Ibn al-Jawzi, many other scholars say, when you name your child, have an intention. Why? Don't just name the child based on something that it rhymes, it sounds good, and it has some, but name the child with an intention. So the first thing. And she had an intention that I'm going to name my son Muhammad and he will love the Prophet ﷺ. He will become like the Prophet ﷺ. This was her intention behind the name. And not only that, she also knew that the Prophet ﷺ said that the best of names are Abdullah and Abdul Rahman. So right when he was born, she gave him a nickname, a kunya of Abu Abdullah. Right? So Abdullah can be part of the name as well. So she can get blessing from both. Today we're looking how can my name be part of my son's name? And he was sticking in there somewhere. Not that, look, with intention, finding out what name could be that name that my son or my daughter can aspire to become. And it would be amazing if I name my son or daughter this name. The first thing. The second thing is Imam Bukhari was born with weak eyesight. And the stories are mentioned, and I'm not going to go into detail. And then later on, he actually became blind. The mother never lost hope and kept making dua. Tahajjud. I mean, she was always making dua for her son that Allah give him eyesight back. One night in her dream, she saw Ibrahim alayhi salam. And Ibrahim alayhi salam said to her, Ya hadihi, قد رد الله على ابنك بصره لكثرة بكائك. Allah has returned the eyesight of your son. Why? لكثرة بكائك. Because of how much you cried for this. How many tears you shed for your son. Because of this, Allah has returned the eyesight of your son. Or أو كثرة دعائك, in another narration, that because of the amount of dua you made, right? Subhanallah. And then the next morning when she woke up, she saw that Imam Bukhari's eyesight was returned and he had perfect vision. He had not just 20/20 vision, but his vision was such that he says, I have written many books with just the moonlight. No, candle, nothing. He had very strong vision after that. Imagine if Allah miraculously returns your eyesight. It's not going to be like our eyesight. So his eyesight returned to a higher degree. He would write just with the moonlight. He would read books just with the moon. He would not need candles or anything, which was such a big ni'mah. So now the second, the wording in this bashara, glad tidings that Ibrahim as-salam gave to the mother of Imam Bukhari, لِكَثْرَةِ بُكَائِكَ, is because the mother kept making dua. Sometimes we start making dua when our child is already lost, when the child's already off track. This is we need to make dua. We need to make a schedule and be very, very generous with our du'as for our children. Because there is no barrier between the parents' dua and the acceptance. We just need to do. Imam Bukhari's mother never gave up hope, kept crying, kept making dua. We need to get into a habit of making dua for our children, right? Early on, and also making dua for others' children. The final thing I will say is that she was actively participating in the upbringing of her child, in the education of her child. So after, what do you think? So, now this miracle happens, her child's eyesight is returned. Now what do you think she does? Now, right away she takes him to become hafiz. So by the age of 6, he had memorized the Quran. Right? And after he memorized the Quran, the mother would take her son, Muhammad bin Ismail al-Bukhari, to the gatherings of hadith, and she would wait while her son is, remember this happened with the mother Imam Malik too? Actively participating in the education. So then what happens, she takes him to gatherings of hadith, and by the time he was 12 years old, he memorized 7,000 ahadith with the chain of narrators. Not just normal ahadith, 7,000. You want to hear something interesting? This is the most interesting thing. The mother took her son to 1,800 teachers. Habibi, when your son is going to karate school, it's so difficult just to take him to one place. Take him to Kuman. We're sitting in a car with AC, everything is perfectly fine. Imagine how much this mother was doing. Take one teacher, just in the neighborhood, in the area, just one after the other, one after the other, one after the other. She took him to Makkah. And then Imam Bukhari says, when my mother brought me here, I was studying here, my mother and my brother went back and I stayed back. Right? That's just remarkable. This is the actively participating in the upbringing of your child and making sure you're there for him is an amazing thing. Not just putting him in an Islamic school, not just putting him somewhere and expecting that everything will just fall into place. So this is the upbringing of the parents, that Imam Bukhari's parents he was blessed with, and guess what happens? Irrespective of where he was born, irrespective of the region he was born in, this place became the marja, the center of knowledge in ilm al-hadith in his life and after he passed away. How? Just one person. And I say this because people who are living in the West, this is hope for the parents of the West. This was not even 100 years after the Prophet ﷺ, like 100 years after Islam came. So maybe in America, Islam is going to be like maybe 100 years soon, maybe 80, 90 years. But did we produce Imam Bukhari yet? We could. We have the potential. Don't lose hope. It doesn't matter don't lose hope. It doesn't matter where you're living, what state you're living, what city you're living in. Take responsibility and do the things that the parents of Imam Bukhari did. Allah can bless our children the way He blessed Imam Bukhari. Allah make us among those who have children like this, and make us among those who can change the name of America, the Western world, for the ones who come after. Just like before Imam Bukhari was born, Khurasan was known for fire worshipping, and after he left this world, it was known for hadith. It is possible we can change that about the Western world, about our countries as well. Jazakallah khair. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.